these are universal best practices, but I think even more important when there's more focus on tighter budgets, when your CFO is saying no more often. And I think, even in good and bad markets, I think we as marketers don't always do a very good job of telling a story behind the budget we're asking for, but telling a story about what we're trying to do with not just our marketing budget, with our marketing programs overall. And I think you'll see a theme in my content here around helping to communicate not what you are spending, but what you are buying. You are not spending money on tactics. You are buying outcomes for the business. And we don't do a very good job of that. I think sometimes we say, okay, well, here's a line item. Here's a spreadsheet showing all the stuff I'm going to spend money on. We don't connect that with the results very well. And so when it comes to be budget time, sometimes we give that spreadsheet to the CFO and she says, well, I can only give you 75% of that. And so we cut 25% of it. And there's still no discussion about what we are losing. What are you not buying? What can you not achieve with that lower budget? And so these become complicated and sometimes difficult business discussions, but that's how we as marketers communicate our role as revenue producers, not cost centers. So I want to talk about a few ways that we've found that our clients and other companies we work with are successfully having that conversation. It doesn't mean they're winning all the budget that they want, but it does mean that they're having a more business-oriented conversation with their partners in finance and in the board as well. So, not a lot of sort of rocket science in here, but it's amazing to me how many times organizations don't ask, or marketing teams don't ask for the organizational goals up front. Right? This isn't just what the sales numbers are. What are we trying to achieve and what is our corporate strategy to get there? Are we focused on net new customers to hit our numbers? Are we leaning in on existing customers and expanding book of business? A lot of companies are doing that right now when they know that getting new logos is going to be more difficult. Sustaining existing relationships is where they're going to sort of drive at least short-term success, maybe in the next year or so. If that is the goal for the organization, how does your strategy and your budget align with that? And if you're not asking those questions up front, you may be presenting something that says, oh, we need to keep generating leads. We need to keep generating more MQLs, keep generating more pipeline. Sounds good. But if some of that is going to be constrained by just market dynamics, if fewer people are buying, if fewer people have the capacity to buy, then all of a sudden, all your metrics, all your benchmarks are going to be constrained. It's going to be more expensive to acquire those customers. And you might be in the middle of that campaign saying, boy, you really should have deployed some of that towards land and expand, towards engaging and retaining our existing customers. So make sure that what you are doing from scratch, whether you're doing bottoms up planning or whether you've already got a plan and you're trying to just recalibrate moving forward, what are the organizational goals that you're focused on? And if marketing has not been sort of at the center with your sales partner as a revenue producing team, start now. Like, get sales buy-in on what you are doing. Ideally, your marketing budget as it is presented, your marketing plan as it is presented to the leadership team, to the board, to the CFO, should be you sitting right next to your sales counterpart. Your sales counterpart should know what your strategy is, should buy into what you are doing, and be nodding enthusiastically as you walk through what you need to be able to support his or her goals, right? And I know this takes a little more time, but I guarantee you your sales partner will appreciate you coming in and doing this because they want to make sure you're doing this the right way. And sometimes this might mean less money towards demand efforts and more money towards sales enablement, right? If you look at where you are today and say, listen, like we work with a lot of companies in very small niche markets in B2B. Sometimes that means you don't need to go spend more money on search. You know who the companies are you need to be selling to. You know the people in those organizations you need to be selling to. Maybe you've been in market enough that you've got communication and you've got relationships with a lot of the key buyers. What are you doing to accelerate understanding, commitment, and a commitment to change and a commitment to buy? That may not be demand channels. That may be field marketing events. That may be sales enablement programs, right? So organizational goals tied down to getting sales buy-in on where those investments need to happen. We all know that, the board, the CFO looks to sales first and says, what do you need? And if sales says what we need is what marketing is creating for us, that's going to help grease the wheels to get what you need to achieve your goals. I'm going to move forward a little more quickly here, just for space sake. I've got this is part of a much longer deck that we give. I think we're just going to try to keep this to 10-15 minutes. I've got a much longer deck around sort of marketing in a downturn. I've got an 80-page workbook that I think, Carol, we've got here that we can give to folks as well. But I wanted to kind of keep some of the highlights here just in terms of sort of positioning the budget you have. Another key to successful budgeting, like give money back. Be very clear about what hasn't worked. I think a lot of marketers are afraid to do this because they're afraid to lose budget. But if it wasn't working, someone's going to find that out. Someone's going to see the metrics and wonder why you didn't bring that up. If you're not being above board and cutting things that didn't work, that's going to be a credibility issue sooner or later, and sometimes both. So be clear about what didn't work. Be clear about what you're cutting. That communicates to the rest of the organization that you are accountable, that you are looking at metrics, that you are thinking about the money with kind of more of an owner mentality, with more of an investor mentality. That's what the CFO is going to love. That's what the board is going to love. And there may be things that didn't work that you're like, we know why they didn't work, and here's why they didn't work, and here's why we think this next iteration of it will work. That's a story that you can tell as well. But cut the fat from things that didn't work and be really critical about that. And it's not always a black or white thing. It could be like, here's things that for sure didn't work. Here's things that we know why they didn't work, but we think it's worth trying again. Here's things that we've learned from, and we have higher confidence that they're going to work now. And it may be a discussion around sort of which shade of gray you're willing to keep and fund, and which of those might, at least for now, kind of go onto the cutting room floor. But like, have that discussion with data and come in with some honesty about what's working and what's not. The credibility and trust goes up significantly when you do that. All right. This is one of my favorite things that I think aligning with this idea of communicating what you are doing in marketing based on the outcomes, not just based on where you're spending money. Like, what is the story you're telling the organization about what marketing is doing and where you're deploying resources? And sometimes we can do that best, not just by saying, well, here's all the digital channels and here's the PR and here's the social, but like, what is the job to be done? What are the different phases of business goals we're trying to achieve? So what if whether you do this just in how you communicate your marketing strategy, but also how you organize your budget, how you organize a spreadsheet that might go to the CFO, that might go to the board, that might not have you as the narrator next to it. Could you break down where you're spending money based on phases of the buying journey, starting with market development? How are we increasing market share, understanding of the problem, understanding of our role in solving the problem? What are we doing specifically to create demand and to capture demand and to manufacture demand in that market? How are we supporting the sales team in converting higher volume of opportunities? And then what are we doing to increase lifetime value? So potentially then you start saying, okay, like in the attract side, in terms of driving market development, here's some of the things we're going to look at. Another advantage of breaking it down this way is it separates market development and awareness tactics from demand gen tactics. Like, the last thing you want to do is to get into a conversation on every tactic you have. Like, what kind of pipeline did that generate? How many leads did that generate? You have to build market awareness to more efficiently create demand moving forward. If a market doesn't understand the problem and or doesn't know who you are, that is a tax on your demand gen efforts, because cold lists to cold people that don't know who you are going to have lower response rates. And to get the numbers you want, you're going to have to do a lot more of that activity, and that's expensive. Investing in awareness up front, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and investing in some of that effort, and there's a million ways to do it, is going to subsidize response rates moving forward. It's going to help drive more people inbound. It's going to also increase your response rates and engagement rates on your demand gen tactics. So separating those out, that's part of the story you're telling the organization, right? Like, we are going to see lower response on demand until our market awareness improves, until more people know that there's a problem, until more companies know that we can help, that we're a core component of solving that problem. So storytelling, what am I buying? I'm buying market awareness. I'm buying awareness of the problem. And then eventually you're buying, okay, now I'm buying demand, right? I'm converting these efforts into driving demand into the organization. And then moving forward, what are we doing from a marketing generated and a marketing influenced pipeline standpoint? I think it's really important in most organizations, if you're in B2B, unless you're in some kind of a transactional sale, like, Dustin mentioned the amount of pipeline that's coming from marketing, like, you have to be really careful how you communicate that story. Because if a lead came from a webinar you did 3 years ago and they weren't ready to buy, they were the right person at the right company, but they weren't ready to buy, and now maybe 2 companies later, 2 jobs later, they are ready to buy. Okay, well, now they're in a different company and they're in a different role, but marketing first engaged them 3 years ago. Is that a marketing source deal? Is that a marketing influence deal? Like, we don't have time today to get into sort of all the definitions and complexity of attribution models. We can certainly do that in a future webinar. But I think it's really important to sort of understand the complexity of the body of work it takes and think about not just marketing attribution from a credit standpoint. I don't really care about who gets credit. Like, if marketing gets credit and sales doesn't close a deal, we all lose our job because we didn't make our number, right? What's important is to know what marketing is working, not to give credit, but to predict future performance, right? So if I know certain channels are working, what's my confidence those channels are going to work again? If I know certain sequences of going from awareness to commitment to change to engagement in a pipeline, if I know a certain sequence, a certain message is working and has worked in the past, how does that predict how well I can make that work moving forward? How can I use those insights to create more confidence in the model I'm presenting to the business and have a higher level of confidence that the budget I'm asking for is going to achieve the results I want? That is attribution at work. That is your ability to take information that you have and present a story to the organization saying, I know how pipeline can be created. I know how we can hit this number based on what we've seen in the past. And again, like, you're projecting results as a part of this, right? Like, I mean, I think too often we sort of say, okay, like, here's the money I need. And the budget discussion is about the money. Like, the money is a means into the ends. The more you can talk about and position the outcome, the better off you're going to be. For example, what if you said, okay, here's all the programs we're going to have in place. Here they are broken down by function, and sort of correlate that to results. Say, marketing's goal this year is to generate and impact this much pipeline, and to generate and impact this much renewals or land and expand, and tie the budget to the numbers. So if someone comes and says, okay, like, I can't give you that much money, I think, realistically, just realistically from the economics we need our business to be at today, I can only give you X amount. Well, you can change the amount. You can figure out what you're going to cut, but you can also show quantifiably how that will depress results you can generate. Like, if you come in and say, oh yeah, we're going to impact 10 million in pipeline this year, and you cut my budget by 30%, but we're still going to hit 10 million in pipeline. If I'm a CFO, I'm like, how much more can I cut and have you still commit to this number, which is a really dangerous game, because you still commit to that number and there's a higher risk of you actually hitting it. Like, you may have the tighter budget, you may have lighter expenses, but if you don't hit your number, we're in bigger trouble, right? So tying what you're doing and projecting results not only to your budget, but also showing how that story changes when budgets change as well. And especially in a tight market. Look, I mean, I've had many CFOs tell me my job is to spend money. My job is not to say no. Like, I joke about the CF no, right? And the CFOs, and I've got my own head of finance that says no to me plenty as well, right? And that's good. I want someone like that. But a CFO's job is to spend money and deploy budget in the right places. So if I come in right now and I say, listen, here's the job I need done. Here's the strategy I believe is going to work. And I'm going to tell you that halfway through the year, if some of this stuff isn't working, we are going to stop doing those things and either redeploy that to something that's working or find some plan B of making it work. But I'm also going to tell you, Mrs. CFO, that if I find something's working and I think there's scale in impact on that, I'm going to come ask for more money. And I'm going to make a case for how it's working and the impact that could have. Now, some of that could be redeploying budget within your program from one program to another. Some of it could be coming and saying, like, I'm going to ask for more money. Tell that story up front. I don't know a whole lot of CFOs that are going to just immediately sort of say no to that. If something's working that can drive business results, as a CFO, my job is to spend more money in that place, right? These are the conversations you want to have. It's not about the channel. It's not about the budget. It's about the impact you are having on the business. And finally, we get into sort of where you tie bonuses to revenue impact performance, right? Like, how are you redeploying where the dollars are going? If you've made a story about what impact can have, and if you've got an attribution model that can show what people can achieve, how do you use that in a way that can actually drive performance from the team? How do you focus, instead of the most possible leads at the lowest possible cost, how do you incent a marketing organization to spend 3 times as much on a lead that might be a higher quality lead? We were joking before the webinar started today about, oh, how many people do we get on this webinar? Well, bigger numbers always sound better. Bigger may not be better. Better might be better, right? I might be willing to spend a lot more money to have a lot fewer people on a webinar if they're the right people, that are the right people, the right companies that might be closer to ready to buy. You know, just because you got 1,000 people on a webinar doesn't mean they're qualified. It could be that they're bored and they don't have something better to do. So figuring out, like, how do we make sure that our efforts and our budget is tied to things that are working, and give your organization and give your people from top to bottom incentives to make adjustments along the way. You build a budget and a plan right now. That is not your plan for the rest of the year. That is your intended plan for the rest of the year. It's your responsibility to review, to adjust, and to make sure it's as focused and tightly aligned with driving performance as possible. And the better you can tie bonuses and other incentives to that impact, to those adjustments, to that ability to be agile and focus on what's driving performance, the better off you're going to be.